Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Free Kick, the Fantasy W podcast. I'm your host Jono and we are into our round 9 review. I can't believe that there is only one round to go this season. Absolutely blown me away. And to be honest, the other thing that's blown me away is that I'm no longer the leader here at Free Kick. Will.
Yeah, clubhouse leader. I'm surprised given how I started, but I've been the highest scorer out of the lot of us for the past 4 weeks running. So
woohoo!
Very happy with that. This week I scored 1,182 for a round rank of 163, which moves me within striking distance of the top 200. I'm 266 overall.
How many points do you need to make to get up there?
I think from memory it was about 400 points that I needed to make top 100.
Oh.
So I think top 200 is
well
within reach.
I did the maths earlier. I think you're only about 270 points now.
Ooh.
That's exciting.
It's hard, but it's doable.
Unlikely, but we'll see how we go.
Ash Riddell to score 300 points.
I need Ash Riddell to not only break her possession record, but I need her to do it by a multitude. She needs 50 basically.
That's a big ask, but look, following after you, Mel, you were the second highest scorer from the Free Kick team this week. How'd you go?
Was I? Well, that's exciting.
You were.
Well, given my score was pretty avo, that's not really saying much about us. Yeah, so I went okay this week. I got low thousands, so 1,097. Round rank in the 700s, that hurts. And I actually went up 4 spots this week, which it was far more exciting when I was going up 4 spots already in the top 100, but I'll take it. I went up to 463rd.
Look, holding that top 500 ranking, I think that's a good result. It's a good result.
Yes. Well, I'm only 66 total points ahead of you. No, behind you, so I'm coming for you.
Yeah, coming strong. I wish I could say that I was the third highest scorer here, but I am not. We're going to wait for me a little bit longer because, Liam, you've done something remarkable this week. What have you done?
I've finally gone up in rank.
Huzzah! Get around it.
Oh, it's actually ridiculous.
How many spots?
God.
Oh, it's 5 spots. So more spots than you did. More spots than you did. And I've also I've not had the lowest score on the Free Kick pod crew this week as well. I had 1063 round rank. Again, not that important, but I've moved up overall rank from 1041 to 1036. So kicking goals.
Look how much fun you can have when you just reset the standard of what a good score is.
You say have fun. I'm very much putting this on.
You're dying on the inside.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, well, look, I'm right there with you, giving up on my team. I think I had hope last week, and it's basically been dashed. My attempt at having some unique players in Maddie Collier and Sarah Sansonetti, I think they netted me 51 points between them. It's definitely... Yeah, it's killed my chances, I think, of making any sort of top 100 score. I scored 1,026 for the week. And I have to say, when I was doing the maths, adding it up, I was very nervous that I wasn't going to break the 1,000. So that was a rough one. Slid me out to 389th overall. And I think my plan now is just to try and hold on to that spot and not slide any further.
It certainly has been very much... A theme of the pod. We've all had those weeks where it's slid massively.
Yeah. I also managed to cop my second donut of the year, thanks to a missing Janome Anderson, which was a rough thing to find out on Saturday evening. But look, let's not focus on the negatives. Let's focus on the positives, because this is one of the last weeks we're going to get to do this. Will, tell me, who was your +3 this week?
My +3 was my -3 from last week. The wonderful Hayley Miller. I knew she'd bounce back against, was it Swans this week?
It was the Swans this week.
I knew she'd bounce back. She was on 96 points, I think it was, at halftime. Only ended up on 114 after copying a pretty nasty corky to the hip, but 114 from a unique midfielder. I'll take that every day of the week.
Surely this is about as, close to a Schrodinger's +3 or -3 as you can get, because +3 this week, but may not play in round 10, causing you some serious consternation.
Absolutely. Thankfully, I'll know before the lockout, but I worry about the late out. But Hayley Miller, she's pretty tough. I'll back her into play this week.
I'd be very worried, given she had to be carried back onto the field to sing the song. You know, you might be the highest ranked might be the highest ranked this week, but I would be very concerned that she may not be playing. I guess you've only got to worry about it for one round.
Yeah. So basically, I'm going to hope that she plays and hope that she can shrug it off and do fantastically for me this week as well.
How about you, Mel?
Yeah, my +3 goes to someone I brought in last week, which is the first time that's happened in a while. I brought in someone and I'm happy about it afterwards. Actually goes to Bodie, which I believe I have Liam to thank for this, because this was a trade I was making live during the podcast chats when you were talking about some good quality forwards, and I was like, you know what? I think that's her. So I traded out my my incorrect Ballard to Bodie, who got
correct and incorrect Ballard. That's great.
Yes, who got a 70, which I was pretty happy with.
No worries, Mel. Can I add those 70 points to my score as well to kind of push me above 1100?
Sure. Does it get you into top 1,000?
Yeah, it would actually. It would have. So yeah, that'd have been great. Thank you.
I'd also just like to I know how much the AFLM fantasy guys on this podcast, Jono and Liam, hate my special mentions because I break the format, but you're going to have to listen to it one more time. Special mention to Lily Johnson. So I also had Janome Anderson, who I got a nice picture with at the start of the game, given that she was not playing. And so for that donut, in came Lily Johnson in her second game as a Port Adelaide forward. And hey, she kicked a goal. I mean, she didn't score very well, but she had a good game for her. And I reckon that's worth some recognition. Also got a picture with her after the game to say thank you for kicking that goal.
Yeah, she is someone who most of us were live at that game, just tiny, like 18, and has, looks like a breeze could push her over. Did kick a great running goal in that second quarter for Port Adelaide, but then I don't think she touched it after that point.
I don't think she did either.
Yeah, I didn't get a stat after half-time, so...
Look, I would take any points instead of a donut from Janome Anderson, so I can see why you're giving the shout-out. It's got to feel nice.
I'm pretty sure her break-even was like 13, so she might have even made $100.
Very nice.
And a cracker of a game as well that you guys got to go to. 2 points. There's been a lot of close games this season. I've been blown away how many of them have been under a goal.
But 2 points in a relatively high-scoring game, like that first quarter, I think it was like 4 or 5 goals. So it was a pretty exciting one.
And marred with a bit of controversy with Gemma Horton's goal being disallowed in less than stellar circumstances.
Which the AFLW has signed off on as correct.
I think that the language is a little bit even more nuanced than that. It's that they weren't unhappy with the decision or something to that effect, which tells me that it's not manifestly incorrect. They have not seen any footage to disprove the fact it was a goal. It was a behind, sorry. So take of that what you will. Carefully crafted language.
Do you want to tell us who your +3 for the week was, Liam?
My +3 was also playing in that game, and that was Hannah Ewings, who looks like a genuine superstar. Kicked a goal from near on 40 metres, laid some amazing tackles, was, I think pretty comfortably we can agree, Port Adelaide's best clearance player, outside of Abby Dowrick, who had 3 in 5 minutes in the second quarter.
Comfortably their best player, I'd say.
I think she was comfortably Port Adelaide's best player, looked honestly better in the game than Erin Phillips, and I don't think that that's too outrageous for me to say. And probably within the top 3 best 3 players on the ground, and pulled out a very nice 92 or 93, which put her inside the top 5 forwards for the round. So I was very happy with Hannah Ewings.
Ewings.
Hannah Ewings.
Ewings.
I've given my +3 this week to Ellie McKenzie, who I'm very glad to give it to because I've been forced to hold on to her for a number of weeks in a row now thanks to injuries and late outs. And finally, she's put up her best score of the season, a 78. So very happy to take that. Hope she can back it up this week against North, because I will be holding her again all the way through to the end of the season.
Very good.
Yeah.
I would be a little bit worried. I think Ellie McKenzie, her fantasy scoring, she seems like a bit of a flat track bully, because I think her previous best score before then was Hawthorn.
It was a 76 against the Hawks, yeah.
Yeah, so the less than superstar sides, I'm not sure she'll do as well against one of the form sides in the comp in
White hot North Melbourne team at the moment.
Yeah. Look, I don't think anyone's arguing that she is going to do amazing. It's more so that Jono doesn't really have a lot of choices.
I really want her to do well. That's all.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah. My -3 actually comes from the same game, because Elise Parker only put up a 60, and it's her lowest score for quite some time. I am assuming, I didn't get to see this game, but I'm assuming this is on the back of a Grace Egan tag. Either way, it's not what you're expecting for someone you're paying, 120, 130 odd thousand for. So a little bit disappointing there. But to be honest, she has comfortably outscored the rest of the -3s here. Liam, who have you given your -3 to?
It's tinged with a bit of sadness, because she has been one of my only good speculative mid-season picks, and that's Eileen Gilroy.
Oh, Gilly.
Who, look, she did have a horrendous matchup, so it was always going to be tough to score well, but she really didn't put in a particularly strong effort with 29.
Yeah, sub 30 from a player you've paid up for, that's never acceptable.
No. And look, Brisbane are... I know we talked about North Melbourne being white hot, but Brisbane are a ridiculously dominant side. And so I'm not surprised by it. If it had been an eke like to a 45 or a 50, I probably could have sat with it and been okay, and might have given it to another premium, quote unquote, defender. But unfortunately, 29 is not good enough.
Mel, how about yourself?
Well, I'd like to agree with you on Parker and add to that Lynch. So this one is maybe a bit more personal, because I was really tossing up getting rid of Lynch a couple of weeks ago. She just wasn't doing particularly well, and I got convinced, no, don't mess with your premiums. This was after our Sweet 16. She's in the Sweet 16. And alas, she's not done particularly well since then, and every week it just annoys me further. So, yeah, she only got a 43 this week, which I think we've spoken a lot about her before. Probably not expecting her to be coming back with an amazing score anytime soon. So it might be time for her to finally go.
Yeah, I think so. I'm probably going to be trading her out as well this week. It's been a very disappointing 3 weeks from her. What blows me away is that 43 is actually her highest score in the last 3 rounds. And that's probably the saddest thing about this -3.
Yeah.
Jono, ask me how long she's been in my side for.
How long has she been in your side?
3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah, that makes sense.
The curse has struck.
Hey, Liam, you trading her out this week?
I have bigger problems than Katie Lynch.
Wow, to have bigger problems than a 43 as a high score in 3 weeks. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah. Well, this is what happens when you ranked 1,000th, Mel. Your team's pretty crap. Like, you've got to fix non-premium players.
Yeah.
Oh, golly.
Well, let's move over to a team that's doing pretty well then. Will, what's your -3 this week?
My -3 this week was Olivia Fuller. Going up against Adelaide, knew it was going to be a tough matchup, but a 36 is not really good enough, especially when a lot of people are putting semi-premium type midfielders into their utilities, so she might be one to make way this week for me. Though she does have a very favourable matchup against Sydney, so it will cause me a bit of a consternation, I think, this week.
She did better than our utilities of Jess Lowe, so...
That is true, so...
And I really, really want you to hold Fuller to the end, just so you can say that you've played a whole season and done pretty well without going loophole.
The one thing I will say is, if I do trade Fuller, I think I'm actually going to go sideways, not all the way down. So
you're going to hold on to actually playing a ruck all season.
Holding on to playing a ruck the whole season, if I do it. Because I'm strongly considering Lauren Pearce from Melbourne, but still a bit of water to go under the bridge.
I love it. Well, look, I think our scoring was pretty reflective of how the entire competition did. You know, I think the very low scoring across the board. I think to stay in 100th spot this week, you had to score 1,159, which is the lowest it's been in nearly a month. And that's left Riddle Me This, or Riddle Me This, in 100th spot, which I love the name. It's absolutely fantastic. Didn't stop everyone from scoring poorly, though. Someone, the Nibrods, has put up 1,314, which is a very, very good score, and moved up to 103rd overall, the Nimrods. So fingers crossed they can sneak in this final round. There has been no movement at the top. We still have the Goats in first place, and they've actually built up a pretty sizable lead. They've got 50 points over second place and 85 points over third, which seems like we might have a little bit of a watch on our hands this last round just to see who takes out top prize.
Very exciting. A little bit less exciting than last season when it was us.
Thanks, Mel. I didn't need to be reminded. I was already thinking it. I think the big thing that in future seasons I'd like to be able to see is to actually see the sides, so you can kind of more actively follow how the top sides are doing. But can't have everything in a kind of burgeoning competition. So we'll just have to wait and see how things pan out at the end of the week.
These coaches at the top, who aren't us, are still trying to figure out how they're going to tackle round 10. Let's give them some advice that put us down the bottom, eh? Let's do our best with that.
That's what we're here for.
Well, look, we're sort of thinking about how we can tackle round 10, and I think coaches have got a few options. You've only got the one set of trades, and it's one round, which means
go big or go home.
Everything comes down to this one set of trades, it's a lot of pressure. So I think there's three options that I've been thinking about, and I want to know your thoughts on them, team. The first one is, aside from the absolute best of the best, I don't think anyone here has a full team. Everyone still is fielding rookies. And so one option is just to carry on with your upgrade strategy and keep getting rookies off the field. So I think that's the first option that people will be considering. The second thing is, if they've got underperforming premiums, who we'll talk about in a little bit, sideways trade those to other premiums who are a bit more unique. So someone like, what's a good example, is Katie Lynch. You don't want those 40s every week. It's not the premium you want. Why not take a sideways, and for an extra, I think, $5K, I think you can pick up someone like an Elizabeth Keeney. I think that's a pretty interesting option for coaches to be considering. And the final one is one that is a little bit riskier, but it's one that I always come back to. A few years ago, there was a coach who traded out Tom Mitchell when he was at the peak of his powers, managed to turn him into multiple premiums, and won the AFL Men's Comp as a result of it. I'm wondering if there are players that we're looking at here who we're looking at their fixture going, I don't think they've got a great matchup. I think they're going to come into a pretty low-scoring game. Can we split those into two players? And I kind of want to start with, Mel, your thoughts. What do you think about this strategy?
I was going to say, is this a strategy you colloquially named I'm going to fuck up my team earlier today?
No. That was a different strategy I've been taking for the last few weeks. It's not been going too well. No, I like to call this divide and conquer. That's a much catchier name.
Okay, that's a much more polite name. Also, I'm wondering, with this guy you're referencing, did he do it in the last round of the season, or did he do it with a little bit more time to go?
Very, very final round. Very, very final round.
No way.
Yeah,
okay.
He thought that Tom Mitchell was going to get tagged, and he did. He brought in, I think, Seb Ross and some other players on the side. And it was a throwback. It was a real throwback. Yeah. But look, there's a player that I've been thinking very specifically on for this play. And Will, I want to get your thoughts on it, because it's Ruby Schleicher. She put up a 12 last week, and we know that was injury affected, right? My question is, if she's potentially going to carry this injury into the next week, and next week she's playing Brisbane, is this a player where we go, I don't want that 110K or whatever it is. I want her out of my team.
The Schleicher's dropped 7K down to below 100 this week, so she's 99 and a bit.
99 a bit, yeah. I think that's something that's potentially worth going, I can get an 80K player and take a rookie up. I want to know your thoughts.
My thought, well, I saw Ruby on the Friday training session. She looked very, very proppy. So I was actually thinking she probably shouldn't have played against North in the first place. So to be out of the game with that injury didn't surprise me as much as it pained me to see it happen. Apparently it was mostly precautionary, and they are hopeful she'll play this week. They're going to get scans to determine the severity of it. But I think it's one of those things where even if she does play this week, probably going to be jabbed up, trying to get through some pain, going to be probably a bit restricted in her movement. I think that it's going to really cause her to struggle to scoring, and then you have to factor in it's against Brisbane, who are the best team in the competition. So it pains me to say, but at this stage, this is the first time in AFLW fantasy history that I won't have Ruby Slisher in my team.
Shock and drama.
Big. Now, the other thing that we need to talk about is Ruby's role in that first quarter against North Melbourne, because she was playing a hard stoppage tag on Jazz Garner. Now, if you were thinking we might be able to beat Brisbane and you're Collingwood, you would probably still be thinking you'd send a tag to Bates or Ali Anderson at stoppages. You would have Ruby Slisher, your one big-bodied midfielder, at least putting a stoppage tag on somebody.
See, I think this was a unique one. I think this was unique because Slisher's the only big body that can go with the bigger body of Jazz Garner. I think for a Brisbane one, you could probably run someone like a Sheridan. You could run a number of players on there. Regardless.
What about Michaela Can? Where's she gone? She's
Michaela,
fallen off the face of the earth.
Michaela Can as well.
She cannot get a time in the midfield.
They were soundly beaten this week in that midfield, and especially once Slisher went out of there, because it meant that they had to completely reshuffle. Garner got off the leash. And against Brisbane, you've got to worry that, once again, the Collingwood midfield is going to be really under the pressure. And so, coming off the hip injury, even if she plays, if you've got other things you need to do, if you're happy to cop maybe a 40, is probably what we'd probably expect from Ruby this week. Fine, like this week I was happy with the 12 because my alternative was a 0. But I think that this is a really good example of what you were saying, Jono, where you can take Ruby, who is still quite highly priced as a defender, take her down at 10, 15k to someone who should outscore her this week just based on the information that we have, and then use that money somewhere elsewhere.
So here's a question for you then. You're one of the quite likely 13 coaches that owns both Ruby and Katie Lynch in the top 100. Which one do you trade out?
Both.
I'd be trading out, yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. If Slisher is named, I would be prioritising Lynch out. If Slisher is not named, obviously she has to go first.
Yeah, well, obviously if she's not playing, then you can't be running her with her in your side.
But at the moment, the way it is at the moment, I reckon it's absolutely dead heat, and I'm almost with Jono where I'd say I'd get rid of both of them.
But what happens, and this is where we bring in the other final detail, Emma Carney also comes in under an injury cloud.
Yeah, ice on the knee brace as well. I think that's mostly precautionary, but at the same time, you don't like to see your premium defenders with big loads of ice and then a knee brace on. So
yeah, I'm almost just a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to break that scoop on the pod, that we saw her with a knee brace on at the St Kilda game, and that Sarah Black beat us by a few hours, saying, oh, she was seen. It's like, yes, she was seen at the game, standing around in front of the St Kilda rooms after the game had happened. But yes, that I am in the position where I have all three. I won't know if Emma Carney. I won't know if Emma Carney is playing. I will know if Ruby is playing, I believe. But it is going to be a very tight run thing. But there are going to be coaches in the top 100. Emma Carney's got 40% ownership in top 100. Ruby's got 91, and Katie Lynch has 13 or 14. So there are going to be some coaches in there that have all three. I think it's probably Ruby, Katie, and then Emma. Yeah.
I think you've almost got to assume that Carney's is precautionary and that she'll play.
Particularly as a captain.
I would think it's about one of Collingwood or North is going to make the top 4. I'm really curious as to how that's going to, whether or not North can make that jump in.
If North beat Richmond, assuming that Brisbane beat Collingwood, North are in, pretty much. So I think they'd probably be more likely to risk Carney playing than Collingwood would Slisher.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very, very big conundrum. And at the moment, in my current trade plans, I'm only trading out Ruby. But I'm gonna have to do so many different iterations to see what I can fit if I also want to trade out Lynch and if we hear anything more about Carney this week.
Yeah, it sounds to me like if you're in contention, this Friday's teams is going to be a very important one for you to be watching.
Do not be driving when team selection happens, Jono.
I almost certainly won't be. My housemate has just picked up COVID. I'm probably going to be here all week, so
very good.
Quiet week for me.
Well, you won't miss any exciting news then.
But look, that's talking about injury players. I'm curious about whether or not you would be trading out players that are just out of form. Because Katie Lynch is one example, but what about someone like Elise Parker, who's only gone over 85 once in her last 4 games?
I think
even someone with the cost of... I mean, Anne Hatchard's worth 145k. You could turn that into 2 very, very good players. She's only gone 84 across her last 3 games. Is that someone you'd be considering moving on?
I think those are luxury trades. I think if you are in the position where you can split Hatchard into 2 players, you're doing pretty bloody well. I think that, as we've just discussed, there's carnage in the back line at the moment with a lot of the players. So I would be expecting most coaches to be doing a fix-up trade back there somehow. But if you can then use that money to do that, for example, I've been considering moving Jamie Lambert up. If you have the money to do that, I think it's a great idea, especially if you're going for someone that's unique. And we've talked about that a bit, that at this stage, a sideways trade to a unique premium is something that could win it for you, or it could throw you off. But at this stage, who cares? You got to go for the win.
Are you thinking of trading out Jamie Lambert then?
Considering it, just based on the tough fixture, not less that she's out of form, but coming up against Brisbane. It's just a matter of where I need the money, I suppose, where I think I can get better players. So if I can move a Jamie Lambert up to someone like a Liv Purcell, for example, a Charlie Rowbottom, who I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later, that might be something that gets a 60 to 80 score up to 100 that might just push me up into that top 200, you know? Yeah.
Well, I actually want to ask Mel, one player that I'm thinking about trading out is someone that we share in our teams, is Ash McCarthy. Has had a very quiet few weeks and is playing the Ds this week.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's a lot of money on these players. Like, she's 94 grand, Carney's 97 grand, Lynch is 80. Like, if you're going to go with that divide and conquer, as you call it, strategy, there's actually so many players that I would be more than happy to split in half, but I can only do a couple of trades. And because we're also at the point now where you've got money on your bench potentially in some players that you haven't utilised, so you want to be getting some of that extra cash from there. But only 3 trades, like you said. Yeah, I was thinking, like, because I've got both Anderson and Johnson as my rookie forwards, and one of them kind of has to play at the moment. I was thinking more, do I take one of those up? But you're right, like, McCarthy has a lot of money on her to be not doing particularly well and not having a good final game. So she would be a prime candidate for that divide and conquer. One that I hadn't actually considered, because I'm already looking at Lynch and I'm already looking at Parker. And I'm like, damn, just give me a whole new team.
Just to opine a bit on Ash McCarthy, though, as much as he's not coming in with some great form, I would say that given her propensity to be very, very close to the contest, and just having seen a bit of how Melbourne plays, obviously having watched the Essendon Melbourne game quite intently, I could still see her getting a decent enough number of tackles to make sure that she doesn't have a really bad score. I just think that as much as she's not coming in off the best form, I'd actually be more worried about an Emma Swanson scoring than I would Ash McCarthy.
Really?
Ash McCarthy is...
Swanson's been doing pretty well.
Yeah, I know, but that is... Melbourne will just play keepings off, whereas I think the big thing with McCarthy is she is the first body in there for West Coast.
Yeah, she's going to probably be following around someone in that midfield, which at least gives her the chance to be getting those tackles and maybe a few cheeky clearances. So West Coast against Melbourne, it's a tough matchup for. I'd be wary again about most West Coast players, to be honest.
I would have thought, when I look at Swanson, I kind of reverse the scale of hardness. If it's a really tough matchup, she seems to perform well. If it's an easy game, she tends to kind of take the foot off the pedal a little bit.
That's true. She has traditionally just been the best player for them in games where they've got belted, because she's the only one that seems to be capable of running hard and getting those marks out loose or on the half back line. So I think these are two players that probably aren't priority trade outs, to be completely honest.
That being said, if it's a windy game out at Casey Fields for West
Which it
Coast,
almost always is,
which it invariably will be, that could be a bloodbath. Like, I think it could be no one from West Coast scores well. The Bombers just looked completely incapable of dealing with those conditions, and Melbourne looked at ease. I don't know if anyone from West Coast will touch the ball. You'll just need players that can get enough tackles to anchor a decent score.
Now, look, I think on the basis of restrictive teams, there's one more player that I want to talk about, which feels as luxury gets. But I think it's one where we know the tag is coming for Jazz Garner this week. There's no way that Richmond don't put Grace Egan on it. Best player in the comp at the moment. Is she good enough that we don't worry about it and we still run with it? Or is that 140k in her head enough that you could turn her into, say, a Kate Hoare and then make a gigantic upgrade on the other side?
It's a gutsy person to trade out Jazz Garner, given that she hasn't dropped below 80 this year. And
yeah,
I think even with the tag, I think you'd probably expect still an 80 from Jazz Garner. She is that good. And her ability to drift forward, take marks from clearances, and get those goals is something that, as good as Grace Egan is, I don't think she's going to be able to completely stop that happening, which will allow Garner, maybe she doesn't score a huge 100 like we know she definitely can, but I think it just means a good effort by Grace Egan is to keep Garner to a 70 or 80.
Yeah, I don't think she'll do worse than an 80. My question is, can you get an 80 from another player that you downgrade to, and then with that 50k take an Abby Dowrick or a Montana Ham up to a premium? And that way you're getting more than the difference on the other side.
Well, I suppose in that regard, we've talked about how, as Liam said, he doesn't think anyone from West Coast is going to get the ball against Melbourne, which means that the Melbourne players are going to get a lot. So you could quite literally drop... that 46 grand down to Taylor Harris or a Kate Hoare. And if I was to do that, for example, I could stick 40 grand straight on top of Jamie Lambert and bring in Marinoff or someone like that, you know? So I can definitely see the value in it. I personally just don't feel comfortable trading out Jazz Garner, to be completely honest. I think that to me is your Tom Mitchell play. But you have to nail the two players that you bring in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we know that Jazz Garner, she's that post we do every Monday on Instagram, which talks about the highest forward for the week. I assume it's just this. It's her every week. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the last 4 weeks have basically just been her and Kiara Bowers just every week. So, and it was also Chelsea Randall for a while before she did her ankles. So,
yeah. All right. Well, look, that's some players that you could move on. How about some players that we can bring in? I suppose I think that would be interesting to talk about. And firstly, I want to talk about how we went last week, because we talked about some specky picks, and I want to see if any of them are players that we can carry on with. So, Liam, why don't we start with you? Who were your 3 picks last week, and how'd they go?
So my 3 picks were Charlie Thomas, Liv Purcell, and Greta Bodie. Charlie Thomas came out with a 54, which is below what she was priced at, but interestingly enough was probably the safest pick of the 3.
Yeah.
And was just stuck in an unfortunate game, like played the game that I was anticipating, just didn't get nearly, just, an unfortunate reality. Liv Purcell with an 84 probably wasn't helped by the pretty horrific conditions down at Casey Fields with it blowing a gale, and it was just the kind of Karen Paxman used to do what she did against Essendon every single week, and she just picked her 1 week to do it last week. 84 still not a bad score, and I was also anticipating her being a player to bring in for her final 2 rounds. So I think Liv Purcell is a great player to have this week. And then the final one is Greta Bodie, who scored a 70 and I think kicked 3 goals. So I'll stand pretty happily on that as being a good pick for last week.
Yeah, I think she was the best forward that a lot of us picked.
Yes,
very good game.
Very happy with that advice.
Yeah, Mel brought her in, and
well, I also brought in Charlie Thomas, but that was. I think we were all.
Yes,
agreed
I brought
on
in
that
Charlie
one.
Thomas as well as my Randall downgrade, and 54 wasn't spectacular. I'm not too worried about it, to be completely honest.
Because it could be a big score this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she looked like all the signs were there. It's not as if we missed something.
I think the one thing was it was the first week that the Bulldogs have actually kicked accurately at goal. So
I know, it's actually outrageous.
So they actually didn't get too many kickouts.
Yeah. Mel, how about yourself? How'd your 3 unique players go?
Yeah, so defender pick on Georgia Garnett. Logic was there. It went okay, 54. Courtney Wakefield as my forward pick. Only a 40, so actually the lowest scoring of the forward recce's there. So, not amazing, but...
The plus 3 of this entire thing.
Nikki Gore, my left field, literally off the field pick, ended up with a 72. And I know that pretty much everyone in the Freo midfield did well, as we were expecting to see last week and are probably expecting to see again next week. I mean, we got a huge score from Miller, I think East, and a couple of, what's her name?
Runnels, yep.
Also did very well. So it's not as if Gore was a standout amongst everyone, but she came through.
And for the price she was at as well, it was just delightful to see that happen.
Absolutely. How much did she make last week? Almost $4,000, so not bad.
Very good.
Not that I had her.
Actually, do you
Still
know,
0 in the top 100.
What's very funny is we're going to go through this, and I don't think anyone brought in their own speculative pick.
No, I did.
Brought in everyone.
No, I did.
Who did you...
Cincinnati.
No, the worst one.
I brought in the worst
far
one.
And away the worst
I'm about
one.
to issue an apology to everyone who took my advice on this one, because even though the logic was sound, it just did not pay out. So I'm gonna jump in here. My pick was Sarah Sansonetti, who scored a 19. She was only priced at around 50k. And I did say at the time it was risky in that regard because she was playing pretty much as a rookie player in the Collingwood backline. Normally, going up against a team like North would be fantastic for a player like Sansonetti, but North was so clinical going forward against Collingwood that there just wasn't any opportunities for kick marks like Collingwood are usually doing in that backline, which meant she just did not get near it. Still made some money, so that's fine, but unfortunately, if you had her on the field, you had to cop the 19 like I did. In the midfield, I was also stitched up by the Slisher injury, actually, to this one, because Jamie Lambert was looking pretty good early on, and then once Slisher went out, she copped a lot more attention from that North midfield. Ended up with a 70, which was passable, I suppose, but unfortunately with, as I said, the Slisher injury, meaning she got more attention, and a tough matchup next week, probably not an ideal one to bring in. And my forward pick was Daria Bannister, who scored a 46, which is a pretty good effort, to be fair, against a rampaging Melbourne team. But I did say that the reason I thought you'd be a good idea to bring in Bannister was for this week. They're playing Port, who we saw St Kilda, their forwards managed to score pretty well against Port Adelaide. She plays a pretty similar role to one Nicola Zenos,
Who did fantastic last week.
So I think that she's one that if you were a bit worried about her score against Melbourne, hold firm. I'd back her in this week.
Stay tuned for next week when we revisit this again.
When I tell you why I failed on that one as well.
Just before we go off, just watching that North Melbourne performance against Collingwood, like, clinical is almost like underselling it. Like, Talia Randall took the entirety of the Collingwood backline to school. Vicky Wall looked like one of the best forwards you're going to see, not someone who's...
She looked like Erin Phillips out there the way she was playing, just with strength and skill around the ball.
I don't want to undersell it. That, like, banana on the run, running away from the goals is ridiculous for someone who has played 10 games of football in her life.
In her
10
life.
games. She is a freak. And
you can't even say that it's because of her Gaelic history, because they don't play with
They don't even play with... She literally is just like on the run, not even running directly at goals, running towards the boundary line off the outside of the foot. She is an absolute freak. And I just love that for those listeners who weren't listening to every single one of our 18 clubs in 18 days, Emma Carney knew Vicky Wall was going to be this good. Before she'd even met her, was like, yeah, that's the player to watch. She hasn't even made it to Australia yet. I've literally just seen her highlights, and she's that good. Sorry, there ends my North Melbourne rant. I watched that game live, and I was sitting there by myself, just like gobsmacked by how good North Melbourne looked.
All right, Jono, you've probably done the best out of the lot of us in these specky.
I was going to say, I feel a lot better now at this point, having listened to all yours first. I think Nat Ryder with a 77 in defense had a very good game against the Hawks, one of her highest for the year. And Charlie Rowbottom in the middle with 105.
And if we just stop there, both of those picks are miles ahead of our defenders and midfielders.
I would just like it to be known that Charlie Rowbottom was, I think, the most expensive player mentioned by about 30k.
The most expensive and the most owned as well.
Hey, still made it very much underneath our rules. I said it just had to be less than 5% ownership at the time of the...
Pretty sure she had 6% ownership at the time.
5% of the top 100, 10% overall. Let's be very clear on what it was. And go back and listen to the episode. My forward pick didn't fail, but it didn't do too well either. Jess Fitzgerald from the Dogs put up a 56. It's about what she's been doing the past few weeks. Again, looked good, but didn't translate to the fantasy scoring. So, a little bit disappointing there.
I think of the players that we suggested, the three best trade-in targets are Bodie, Grider, and Rowbottom.
Well, look, we're thinking about now trade targets for round 10, the players we think are going to go off. And obviously, we're looking at players that are in good form, players that have good matchups. And I think it's only right that we have a coach on the podcast that's also in good form. So, Will, can you take us through who you think the top 5 targets are this round?
Oh, I thought you were going to throw to whoever the coach of the Goats is then. But I think...
if only I could.
In terms of top 5 targets, I've actually grouped this by matchup, less by player specific. So I've actually got a handful of players. But the first player is Charlie Rowbottom against GWS. We saw what Mon Conti did this week against GWS, put up 124. Charlie Rowbottom, absolute superstar. She will bully that GWS midfield. Expect another ton. The next matchup that I've sort of honed in on is the Geelong-Sydney matchup, and we've seen Sydney cough up some really big scores. So the two players I want to highlight here, in terms of the midfielders, you can go Prosparkas, who is much higher owned, but the one I'm really interested in is Amy McDonald for both the uniqueness and her ability to go really big. So I think Amy McDonald is the one, if you're looking for that Geelong midfield upgrade, is the one I'd go for. If you want someone slightly different, I'd be looking at Chloe Shear. She's had a really good month. She's got the ability to kick big bags of goals. And against Sydney, she's going to get plenty of supply. So if you're looking for a bit of a unique forward option, I think that she's probably the one that I would be looking at from Geelong. So I've also put in Karen Peterson here, mainly because I traded her in for Eilish Sheeran, and it got me an extra 24 points. So thank you, Jono. That was his suggestion. Has been playing pretty much every single role this season. So she's back on a wing now, which means she's going to get plenty of midfield ball. She's probably, arguably, the form defender at the moment, I think. Would you guys say?
Slim pickings, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, with Randall going down, Schleicher and Emma Carney having these big injury question marks, I think Peterson would probably be top of the Sweet 16 this week.
Yeah, so Peterson, very good option. Probably a very easy move sideways if you are looking to move on. Schleicher, a bit more expensive, but a really solid option.
Yeah. You need about 20 extra grand if you want to do that from Lynch, because I was trying to figure that out before.
Unfortunate.
Which is a little bit annoying. I mean, I have 20 grand in the bank, but do I want to use it entirely?
You want to use it entirely this week regardless, Mel. You don't have another chance to. You don't have another chance to spend it.
Taking it to my grave.
Going to save 30 grand in the bank for next week.
Question on Sheer though. Like, I know I agree that having watched her play, she's looking like a great pick. But her scoring has been a little bit low recently. Do we think that's entirely like 85 against the Bombers because they were an easier game versus like a very low against Adelaide? Or do we think that, like, do we think she can get another 85 against the Swans?
I'm happy to speak to this. I think the Bombers was a bit of the cat out of the bag because, pun intended, because the Bombers have no good medium-sized defenders, and Chloe Shear, I think at one point she was playing on Alana Barber, another point she was playing on Ash Van Loon and Mia Van Dyke. So all three players are not very old and all have fewer than, I think Barber maybe has 12 games of AFLW experience at this point. So
and is the experienced
one of the three, and is a winger / inside midfielder from her VFLW days. That's what definitely contributed to a massive score against Essendon. I think, and I think I flagged this last week, the big issue in as much as Sydney concede a lot of... it's Sydney this week, right? Yes.
Yes, it is Sydney.
The big thing, and we talked about this last week, Sydney's best line is their medium to tall forwards. Like, Brenna Tarrant and Bella Smith are... I'm sitting here as an Essendon fan incredibly envious that they got those two players from essentially off the proverbial scrap heap as free agents, because they are looking very, very good. Brenner is extremely composed. Bella Smith does not get pushed off the ball. I don't know if Chloe Shear is going to be able to dominate Brenna Tarrant in the same way that she was able to do that to Alana Barber. That would be my only issue with picking Chloe Shear.
She does play about a third of her game time in the middle of the ground, though, this past month or so. I would have thought that'd help her get off the chain and put on some higher scores.
Mm-hmm. I also think that Geelong's finally, much to my relief, got some other tall forwards that those two may be preoccupied in the form of Jackie Parry, Kate Darby and Shelley Scott. So I think that'll definitely be a watch. But I think for me, she is one of those players that every so often she just has an absolute one, as you say, Liam, out of the bag. So... to me, this isn't a sure thing one. This is a unique player you can pick up that just may get you over the line. Yeah.
If it's Molly Eastman or Ella Heads, she may be able to kick 3 goals. Like that's a genuine possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of those easy matchups, I'm going to move on to the Melbourne versus West Coast matchup. As Liam said, there's a chance that the ball will be entirely in Melbourne's hands all day. And 2 of the best possible options you can get in your forward line, especially if you are looking to split Jazz Garner, if you're planning on doing that, are Taylor Harris and Kate Hoare. Both of those two could kick big bags. Taylor Harris is playing through that midfield as a backup ruck as well. I think both of those two are really good options to potentially score big scores this week. And the other one I've got is probably a more unique one, not owned by anyone in the top 100, is Lauren Pearce.
Because no one's got a ruck.
So if you are one of the few people like myself that still has a ruck, that could be a sideways trade that goes to possibly be a player who could have a really big score against a team that gives up a lot of points to rucks. And this is something you've been quite big on, Liam, in terms of West Coast.
Yeah, look, we kind of did see the writing's been on the wall all season that Sarah Lakai has massively improved her own game, but it certainly hasn't carried across to her defensive stocks. She does allow a big scores, but I think the pick of those 3 for me is Kate Hoare. I think there's a world where she puts on another 3 or 4 goals this week. I don't think there's a naturally good opponent at West Coast. I think Sophie McDonald will probably match up on Taylor Harris because... as much as you say Taylor Harris was splitting time in the midfield, that was whilst Lauren Pearce was under a bit of an injury cloud and then out, and they were running Maggie Karras through the midfield. She definitely played less time there against Essendon and was actually held in check fairly decently. I would think that Kate Hoare, who looked excellent again, knows those conditions so well down at Casey Fields. I think another 70 is well on the cards this week.
And the last one I'm going for is Essendon against Port Adelaide. Really interesting matchup, but this one has kind of been brought on by what we saw live down at RSCA Park, which was Kate Sheilor monstering the Port Adelaide backline. And for that reason, I've said Bonnie Toogood could have a really big game this week against Port Adelaide. And the other one who I highlighted before as my unique pick, Daria Bannister, plays a very similar role to Nikki Xenos, runs through that midfield, moves forward, kicks goals, could also have a really good game. So Essendon forwards could be a nice little move that you could get this week to get someone who could get a really big score against a defence that's been under the hammer in the last few months.
I still think Maddie Pressbarkers is probably, if you're looking for a very unique player to bring in at this point, I think she's still below 10% ownership.
But yeah, I think Essendon, this is a really good opportunity for them to finish the season on a high against a Port Adelaide team that probably is tiring a bit. So I think that any of those players, if you can afford them / it fits your trade structure, is a very, very tidy option you can go for.
Just another player, just another name to mention in that game. She's 10.5% owned and she's lost $43,000. Any guesses on who it is?
Erin Phillips.
Correct. Erin Phillips is again in that mould of, I don't know who the Bombers have who will play on her. I don't know who they have to stop her. It may end up, because I think it'll be Danny Marshall will play on Gemma Horton. And then I just don't know if it's Ash Van Loon. She's been great for someone who didn't come in as a particularly high draftee, but damn, that's going to be a brutal matchup.
St Kilda had quite an ideal matchup for Erin Phillips, actually, and Hannah Priest, who's pretty proficient both as a midfield stopper and as a defender. So I agree with you there, Liam. Wherever she plays against Essendon, she's a cheeky chance to be a good scoring player this round.
She's priced below 60, scored 74 on the weekend, which is basically what she scored at last year. I think there's a possibility that particularly in their last home game for the season, she might go 80, 85. And I think that will be on the back of time up forward, because I know that the Bombers are restrictive to midfielders, but I really think this is the round where her playing forward time is actually not a detriment to her fantasy scoring.
Just while we're on Erin Phillips, Mel, would you care to share the tale of the weekend?
Yes, just hanging out, loitering as we do. Our favourite hobby post AFLW games.
Not all of us.
Mate, you were there. You were loitering. And then Will just takes off, and I'm like, oh, hey, Liam, what's Will doing? He's like, I don't know, that's not a player. Will just takes off towards the bus. Oh, hey, look, it's Erin Phillips. And there's me madly running over. Erin! I don't think she likes the attention. And I definitely gave her a lot. So, but got a good cheeky snap with her.
So yeah, based on those ones, we're just going to answer one of the listeners' questions we got from Matt, which was, need to upgrade Zali Goldsworthy. I think that's a pretty worthwhile cause there. Which forwards to target? Depends on how much money you can get, but if you can get up to those Melbourne forwards, I think they're your best options.
And I think Hawes the cheapest of the lot, for about 90.
Hawes slightly cheaper than Taylor Harris, and then Toogood's about the same price as well. So if you can't make it up to those ones, Shear or Bannister might be a good one, but if you can make Kate Hoare, I think she's the best option you can probably find.
And then just on the back of me mentioning Erin Phillips in that priced at in the 50s, one player that I think should get a look in this week is Tani Evans. GWS are going up against the Gold Coast, who are the easiest team for defenders to score against. And as much as she is listed as a forward, she plays as a pure defender, and she is their most skilled defender. I think she could have a massive score this week. And then there is a version of the trades I'm doing this week where she comes in as my F4, F5.
Quick question about Melbourne, if you don't mind. Having a look at the mids, one that I can afford as a downgrade option from Parker would be Paxman.
Oh, not Westy.
What were you hoping I would say?
Eliza West. Liam's favourite. Westy. Handball happy Westie.
But what do we think is Paxman potential?
Had one out of the bag, I'll say that. Been a fantastic player. Will she score big against West Coast? Probably.
Would you trust it though? Like,
would I trust it? Is probably the better question, and I'm not sure I do.
Look, she got 98 against Essendon.
Got 98 against Essendon and had a 96 in round 1, and then her highest score outside of that begins with a 7.
For $100 more, I'd probably be more tempted by Nina Morrison against Sydney.
Well, that's actually good you say that because I have $400 more, so I might as well use it.
So what this is? So this sounds like Mel doing your trades whilst Will and I are having a little repartee discussing who we like.
Isn't that not how we all do our trades?
No.
But yeah, Morrison probably hasn't had the best month. 73, 74, 90, 66. But has had some decent scores near that 100 mark this season, so I'd probably be more tempted by Morrison if that's what you are planning on doing, Mel.
Go out with a bang and bring in a friend of the pod, I think.
If I could provide a bit of a narrative for Paxman, though, because she's 34, they know she can't run a whole season running as a midfielder. It's a lot of work for someone that age. But you coming into finals, you're getting your team ready for exactly what you want it to be in this important 3 weeks of the year. You want your experienced heads in the middle. With 2 weeks to go, they get her back in the middle, back into form. Is there a chance that's what's happening?
She's got... We saw it at the end of 2 seasons ago, I guess, 2021. Finishes on a high. She's got a ceiling that's just over 100, which she's hit a couple of times.
I don't know.
She could be my Specky.
She could be. She could be a great Specky, but I think Nina Morrison has a bigger ceiling. But just before we move off Melbourne, Shelley Heath, who's been playing some more time in the midfield, coming off 3 scores above 60 in the last 4 weeks and a high score of 79. I believe she's priced quite lowly at this point. She is priced at 51, so 74k. You're going to make 25k as a downgrade for Ruby Slasher. Again, going into an epic matchup. And as much as she's listed as a defender, and that's where she's played for most of the season, she's been playing as a midfielder and then also kind of providing a link between the midfield and half forward. She is currently my downgrade option for Ruby.
All right, team, I want to throw you one very random question here, which I think is a really interesting one back on that divide and conquer strategy. It's from Shannon asking, random question, not sure for me, but interested, would you cash down Ebony Marinoff for a big upgrade on another line for 1 week? Because if you take Ebony Marinoff down, who I believe is priced over 168,000 at the moment, it's
169, second most expensive player.
169,000. You could take her down to someone priced around that 120 mark. So throw in your Liv Purcells, your Charlie Rowbottoms up at 130. You'd be making nearly 50k. Yeah, nearly 50k for a player. You put that on top of, I don't know, a Janome Anderson, and you're immediately up to, what's a good example? A Chloe Shear or someone around that price that you could comfortably run. Daria Bannister. Is that a play that's worthwhile in this last week, assuming that you don't have any cash on your rookies? Because a lot of people's their benches are just dead.
I don't think you can, because I truly don't believe that St Kilda will be able to stop them. The only reason you would do it, because we ran into this problem last year, Ebony Marinoff could have had a basquillion points last year, but Adelaide knew that they'd won and didn't have any more reason to play Marinoff or Hatchard on the ground after about 3/4 time. So I think there's a world where you could trade Marinoff, but damn, it would take a ballsy decision.
If I was going to trade one, it would be Hatchard. If you have Bowers, then maybe you can get away with it because you've got a backup.
I think you're only doing it if you've just got someone who, like me, you're trying to get rid of Taylor Ortlep, who scored 19 or 17 or something.
Oh, that's a shame after a big week before that.
big week, like 30.
Big week.
big week. Short of that, I just don't think. I still think she can go on any given day 120 plus, and I don't know if you're going to find enough value for that.
I think let's keep our episode moving on. And Liam, I'm going to ask you, how did your captains go last week?
Look, this is my worst week for, I'd say, a month plus.
I think it was very reflective, however, just of the league in general, actually, because there were a lot of premiums not putting up good scores.
So Bowers was number one pick last week. That one was pretty easy, and she was a high score for the round, so I'm happy with that. But then the lower scores from the Adelaide girls, and then Garner not going enormously well, and then getting dragged down by a 60 from Parker and 56 from Jono's fave, Abby McKay in there. Abby McKay, was she in my top 10?
It took a lot not to give her the -3 this week, I got to tell you that.
Oh, that would have hurt you a lot.
I couldn't do it.
Look,
I couldn't do it.
I think for the first time in a long time, my average for my captain selections was below 90. It was 89, but it wasn't incredible this week.
Well, look, let's bounce back then. Who's going to be your number one coming into this final round?
Janome Anderson.
Yeah, love it.
Take 2.
Followed up by Lily Johnson.
Yeah, no, take 3. You can do better.
Number one pick this week is Turbo. It's Kiara Bowers, and then number 2 is Marinoff. Number 3, it's probably Georgie Prasparkas, just given her run of form after the mid-season and even coming off her suspension. And then I think...
Now Janome Anderson.
Now it's Janome Anderson, exactly. I think Amy McDonald's probably still going to be in the top 5 or 6. And I think if you were really trying to go unique and not go Kiara Bowers, just to kind of hope to get a leg up, I'd be going for either of the Geelong mids or Charlie Rowbottom for their matchups this week.
I just wanted to quickly bring up a stat that I had looked into before. So Kiara Bowers is currently averaging 114, which is the second highest average, only behind herself from last season at 115. But last season, she did that from 6 games. And this year, obviously, playing the full 10. So as long as she scores at least 17 points this weekend, she will be setting the record for most points in a season, which is currently held by Ebony Marinoff from last year. Last season in, January, February?
Early
Season 6.
Wow.
It's, and she's gonna comfortably beat it. It's
don't say
hang
that,
on.
Johnny.
I'm concerned that you said this now.
Oh, no.
She'll get to 16 points and I don't know, do her ankle or something, and then we will be not only was Will the kiss of death to begin with. Liam has been consistently just don't go anywhere near him. But our pod is if we've
guys,
cursed
my unique picks went
Cursed
very well
Bowers.
last week. I'm on a good roll as long as I don't trade them into my team.
Doubling
I
down
will
on the
put
confidence.
everything.
Jesus.
Kiara Bowers will go over 16 points this week, guaranteed. I put my life on it.
You know what? I reckon we need to attach something ridiculous to this in the very off chance that it doesn't happen. So if anyone out there, any listeners have any suggestions for something Jono can or should do, if Kiara Bowers somehow does not manage to make 16 points, let us know.
There's almost nothing that I wouldn't do because I'm very, very confident that she will. Very confident
Jono,
that she will.
I reckon if she does go below 20, you give away your address on the final pod of the week so people can go and egg your house for the obvious curse you gave to the entirety of the top 100.
Look, that's fine as long as I have a week to prep some security protocols. That'll be fine. I'm happy with it. Yeah, done.
Confirmed. Jono's address on the
Filled
podcast
him off
next
with
week.
your AFLM and AFLW top 100 hats.
Oh, lordy lord. Well, look, at that point, just looking ahead to next week while we're on it, I think just to let everyone know, we are going to be doing a couple post-season episodes before we wrap up for the year. Obviously, we'll do our standard end of week review. We'll do that sometime next week.
A few less trade options, I think.
Yes, a few less, that's true. But we are going to be giving out some player awards, so keep an eye out. We're going to throw up some polls on Twitter over the next or the next week or so. And then after that...
Probably Insta too.
Yeah,
probably Insta too.
On the socials.
Yeah, absolutely.
Check the
on
socials.
Looking ahead to Season 8, we're also going to put out an episode talking about who the players are. We're putting on our little black book for Season 8. We're expecting big things from these players. So keen to talk through that one. I think that's going to be a very exciting episode.
Sometimes I feel that my bluff of looking like I know a lot about footy is working. And then you said something like Black Book a few weeks ago, and I thought it was the list of people that we would never, ever consider having again because it's like our death book.
Don't worry, I had no idea about this either. And yeah, I was in the same boat. I thought Jono was referencing some sort of death note. So
yeah.
No,
Is it obvious that Will and I are not from a AFLM fantasy background?
Yeah.
Well, I will say about this Black Book, if we could go back through all our episodes and comb from when mostly me has said that's a Season 8 pick, I reckon we've got basically a content that we could just splice together.
If I could say one thing confidently, it's that our preseason was electric. We nailed all of our starting picks, and then we traded our way out of contention. And I'm excited to do it again next year with a terrific preseason.
That is particularly true for me.
I did the opposite. A lot of my starting picks were terrible, but I've traded my way back into contention.
All right, so we'll just ignore Will's Black Book. Is good.
I think I'm going to take the prize for the biggest fall because I started on 3rd, and now I'm trying to stay in the top 500.
Mel, do you want to say that again? Mel, I was inside the top 30, and I'm struggling to make top 1,000. I only gone up in rank 1 week because I started so high.
Oh, cursed.
Oh, funny. We're also talking about some finals content. Liam, do you want to run the listeners through what you were talking about before?
Yeah, so we kind of want to show that we like to talk about things that aren't just fantasy each week. So there is a thought that we will do either a short podcast or a Twitter space each week to talk about the finals. Maybe a little bit of fantasy chat in there, but also just kind of discuss how the games go down. Because at this point in the year, it's just interesting to discuss which, like, the really good sides, as opposed to just trying to figure out who the expansion teams are. Much the same way that I don't know if it'll end up in the pod, but I went on a rant about how much I like Vicky Wall and North Melbourne. Would like to be able to do that without the risk of it being cut from the pod each week. And so, yeah, stay tuned on Twitter for that. We'll put out some more information when finals start.
I can't wait to cut both the initial Vicky Wall statement and then the follow-up comment.
Boo! Boo!
You just got Alex Ballarded.
Vicky Wall.
Oh, God. All right, last thing, guys. Let's wrap up our final round trades. I'm excited to hear what we're doing. Mel, we're going to start with you. What are you thinking for your last 3 trades of the year?
So, I'm not going to be bullied out of trading out Lynch.
Keep your premiums, Mel.
Your premiums.
Well, look, she's out. She is well and truly out. Peterson's in.
Cut.
Peterson is great. I also have been wanting to watch her for a little while, knowing she's in my fantasy team. So excited about that.
Mel, can we just go back to about this time last year? Karen Peterson, great.
When I was cursing Harrington, yeah.
Do you like her now because she's the same name?
Exactly. New season, new me. Parker, probably out. Because not consistent enough scoring. I might come to regret this. I might do a Dowrick here, but so be it. Probably for Paxman, TBC. I'm keen on bringing in some Melbourne players. And then we've got...
Very unique.
Unique. Well, it'll either... Parker will do amazing because she's relatively unique in the top 100 now. Only 50 or so have her. Either way. And then Roberts, I'm thinking... I have way too many Eagles players for this last round. I think I had 4. McCarthy, Roberts, Swanson, and Thomas. Oh, and Britton on my bench. So 5. So you know what? One of them has to go. And I'm going to do a swapsy. Roberts out, Hoare in, who I think is going to be amazing this game, as we've already spoken about. So that's what I'm thinking.
No, I like the trades.
What about you, Jono?
I'm actually doing something remarkably similar. Oh. So, also trading out Katie Lynch. She's got to go.
Don't
4 Karen Peterson. 3 40s in a row. That's definitely getting me off that train. I, at the moment, am also going Ash McCarthy out to Kate Hoare. So another Eagle for the Melbourne forward.
You chose McCarthy over Roberts. You don't have Roberts.
I don't have Roberts. Yeah, and I think McCarthy. I'm not hopeful for her. And to afford that, I'm taking Goldsworthy down to a rookie. That is currently my trades. I will say the more we've talked about Jazz Garner this episode, the more I'm thinking she might go so that I can trade Goldsworthy up instead.
Oh boy.
That is ballsy.
Yeah.
I really want you to do it.
I
just
haven't
to see
figured
how
out the
it goes.
maths. I'll if I do end up changing to that, I'll post it on Twitter so you can have a look.
And particularly because I only have to get 66 points to beat you, which is the real game now. 66 additional points. So trade out Garner. I think
it's
that's
a close
great
one.
call.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, she's our point of difference between our teams.
Yeah.
Liam, what are you doing this final round?
So at the moment, I am trading Ruby Slasher down to Shelley Heath, upgrading my F5 from Taylor Ortlip to Danielle Ponta, who's a name that we have not discussed at any single point on this podcast, but she's priced below 70k. She kicked 2 goals on the weekend, scored a bunch of points. Looks like she's getting a little bit more midfield time with Chelsea Randall going out with someone that I've liked through the entirety of the season. Has a good matchup as well. I don't think there's a natural someone who can actually go with her at St Kilda. I think she could score another 70, and so I am bringing her in.
I think that's a great call.
Yeah, don't mind that.
Yeah, I think you did miss out her most important stat from the weekend, though.
Oh, yeah. Most running bounces ever in a game with 7.
Very, very impressive. That's what you want.
The most important stat in football. Full stop.
And Will, how about your trades? What are you doing this final round?
Oh, it pains me to say it, but I think I have to trade out my girl Ruby. First time in the entirety of the year that she has not sat in my team. At the moment, I've gone for Isabel Pritchard. Fairly comfortable matchup against Carlton, playing mostly through the midfield. And I've decided to stick with my ruck.
Yes.
In that I'm not sticking with my ruck by trading out Fuller, but I'm picking up Lauren Pearce for the matchup against West Coast. And I'm using the money that I get from that to trade Roberts up to Kate Hall.
Nice. I'm so glad that you're sticking with the ruck because since I traded out for the loophole slightly too early in hindsight, I've gone massively downhill. I think it was 3 going into 4. And you have kept it and just skyrocketed. And I think that is a classic key takeaway from this season. Don't fuck with your utility loophole too early.
We're definitely going to get into that discussion next week. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this season.
Oh, yes.
It's going to be a good one. Well, look, that might do us for this week's episode of the Free Kick Podcast. Keep an eye out for us on our socials and Twitter. We're going to be posting plenty of content in the next 2 weeks, I think, as we wrap for the season. I'm on Twitter at OddsandSteven.
I'm on Twitter at LMTom1.
I'm on Twitter and Insta as HiMelD.
And I'm on Insta at WillH_VI.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Good luck for the final round.